There was a time period which I really consider like a golden age, I guess, of route development in Chattanooga, and that was really from 2008 to 2012.
We were motivated to find new rock and develop new rock. The question always comes back, how were you finding these crags?
And a big reason why there was so much exploration and development was because there was all this high-resolution imagery from Bing Maps and Google Maps, and it was new technology, and me and our buddies used that to our advantage. I mean, we were obsessed with exploring on the internet, and then we'd go out after work and we'd go just check off areas we'd never been to. I've got a raised topographic map in my bedroom, and I have little push pins, and I'd go and mark an area off, and I'd put a pin in it, and I'd keep going.
Denny Cove is about, the way the crow flies, maybe a half a mile to Foster Falls, right under our nose the entire time. So around the holidays, and it's 2010, 2011, Stephen and Cody came out. Again, they were doing a lot of looking on the internet and had some ideas just looking at the topos. And they came out, and they had initially came into this cove. And they found a lot of these climbing areas, like the Pig Wall, like the Shaman Cave, like the Ladies Delight Wall, and they kept on walking to push themselves further and further and further. And then they came around the last bend, and they saw the buffet wall. You can imagine walking up to that cliff and your jaw dropping and being in awe, and that was kind of something that we had been looking to find forever.
Before Denny, all the access projects in town were done out of a shoebox. Basically the SEC on their own. So we were doing $10, $30, up to $100,000 projects, and Denny was much bigger. I mean, it was the first project that was, I think it was, 700 acres maybe, but it was close to 1 million, I believe. But, right away, everybody doubted it because it was like, hey guys, look at this, it's this big tract of land. I think we can do this if we get multiple interest groups, together, united under, the same interest of conserving this property. When you put in this work, and we're talking years of work and thousands of dollars of your own money, I mean, like you don't want it to just sit there and gather cobwebs and lichen, and you want people to enjoy it. So I was always in the back of my head is when I go look for Cliff is, what's the feasibility of long-term access? And there's, again, we're talking about the big equation, that's a huge part that has to line up. We had informal permission to climb there from the caretaker for the property, and so we went in and developed it for several years. Simultaneously, I started talking to the Access Fund, Zach Lashui, who was at the time, I think he was out in Boulder, Colorado. I just remember having this dream, talking with Matt Gant of the SEC. I was like, we could get other people involved, the Lyndhurst or other interest groups in town that have a kind of a united interest in conservation. And I helped put together the first phone call, which was, I remember, it was a big conference call. It was the state of Tennessee, Access Fund, SEC, I think somebody from the Lyndhurst maybe, and I was kind of the moderator. Nobody had ever heard of Denny, nobody had been there. At that point, it was just me and my buddies. And so you're trying to sell this dream of what it could be. Zach and Cody Roney, I mean, they deserve so much recognition. I feel like it really takes a full-time person to take these projects home, to really close them. And that's what Zach and Cody did. That's a big deal.
Access Fund and SEC have worked together for almost 2 decades, starting up at Sunset and through projects like Boat Rock and other acquisitions in Georgia and Alabama. So we've worked together for years. We had a really strong partnership. And when Access Fund looked to regionalizing, we knew Chattanooga would be a great hub for our work in the Southeast and our partners here. And we knew with SEC and other local climbing groups, we could do some great things. So the Denny Cove deal was finalized after 5 or 6 years of work. And it was really the long, slow road of working with the seller, an international timber company, and then working with funders and different partners to put together enough money for this kind of project. Climbers haven't often bought a piece of land worth $1.3, $1.4 million, some 670 acres large. So it almost didn't happen. We almost couldn't get to the number that would work for the seller, but we realized at a point we had enough funders, enough partners to get us over the threshold we could all jump into the deep end and make this project happen. Climbers have a great partnership with South Cumberland State Park, so it's really important when we're going out in Denny Cove or Foster Falls or even Cumberland Trail. Take a minute, fill out the easy climbing permit on your phone. It only takes a second. This helps the state park track our use, track our numbers, and get the resources they need, the funding they need to manage climbing, support climbing across state parks in Tennessee.
One of my favorite things about Denny is how much variety of climbing you have compressed into relatively small space. So it's you can be on your project and on either side of you, people having sort of totally different climbing experiences.
Yeah, it can be super crimpy or lots of side pulls or knee bars. Mm-hmm. And there's so many 512. That's the best wall in the whole Southeast for 512. Mm-hmm. Just stacked on top of each other. And then you have like somewhat harder climbs interspersed, like Little Tokyo.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I love Little Tokyo so much. I think I like, the thing about it is it has just a lot of unique climbing where you do, like I said, you do a crimpy problem and then you do some knee bars and then you do some really cool movement where you put your foot above your hand and it's really insecure and scary but so exciting. And they're all stacked on top of each other.
And if it's something that inspires you, that's always like.
The thing about Denny is that it's the full package, and that's what Stephen and I talked about on day one. Was you've got these standout walls, and then you've got these additional walls that really complement the area.
Denny Cove's unique in the fact that every wall is different. A lot of people say when they climb on the buffet wall that it climbs very much like limestone. There are amazing tufa-like features, pocket-like features, morphed rock that's very unique for the area. But what's also awesome about Denny Cove is the fact that there's a ton of variety. Also here we have the Shaman Cave, which are really hard, overhanging, kind of your quintessential classic steep Chattanooga routes. But a lot of walls in between, the Ladies Delight wall, the Pig wall. There's a lot of moderates. We put in a lot of moderates here. So it's definitely a climbing area that you can climb from 5'7" to 5'14" now.
About 5 years ago, Jimmy Webb got the first ascent of the 14A Lucid Dream after it was bolted by Anthony Meeks. The upper wall seeps most of the year, making it a rarely ascended route. But the crew is fortunate enough to come across a dry spell in the spring season, giving Nicholas a chance to snag ascend.
Okay. Tell us all about how you saw God. Okay.
It was an enlightening moment for me. I learned so much about myself in the process of this route in the 2 tries. It was a long, hard, and deep journey.
This was a labor of love. We grinded, we got in fights, we cried it out, we worked it out. We did everything that best friends do with each other, the full spectrum.
When we started, we all had a different vision of what this place was going to be when we wrapped over. We had no idea. And it comes down to a lot of people saying completely different things. Like some people said, no way this will ever be open. It's just like the 100 other areas that we've got that we won't be able to open, which is a truth about Chattanooga because of it's the private sector of land that has taken over the southeast and a lot of I would just say the east coast versus the west coast, which isn't nearly as developed, so there hasn't been a privatization of the amazing land sources.
You got to remember that, before the SEC was kind of the first group that actually went out and bought something. Because like Edward said, the East Coast is of course far different than the West Coast because all the land on the East Coast is private for the most part. West Coast, big public lands, etc. So you're doing a different, they still have access issues, but it's way different. It's all government stuff and things like that. We've always had to deal with private. And it was kind of interesting that no one really, because there were rock climbers, it's like, money, where are we going to come up with money? But Brad McLeod kind of was like, you just do it, let's just jump in. And that started way back with Boat Rock, but it kind of, all of a sudden you get the confidence that owning the property is not that's the ends to the mean, it's not what you want to have to do, but it's what we're stuck with because of the private ownership. So you kind of learned that, how are you going to do this? Well, buy it.
What we always did and what was always a priority for us was when we found these projects was to not go rogue, was to find the landowner and have that conversation and get that permission and work it through the right channels and develop with best practice. And once it got to a point in those projects where it's time to hand it over, to be able to have partners with the SEC and with the Access Fund to get in there and get the funding, and they hold a lot of the deeper relationships. So it's been an amazing project. I could talk about it all day long. And again, there's so much more to come. I think that this just guides the way of what's out there. And for those that have lived in Chattanooga for a long time, we know what our next goal is.
Due to the nature of privatization of land in the southeast, every coalition in the region has fought tirelessly to protect and open climbing areas. Places such as Boat Rock, Pendergrass Murray, Laurel Knob, Hospital Boulders, Miller Fork, Hidden Valley, Buckeye Knob, and Hell's Kitchen are just a few of many areas previously owned by landowners before local coalitions and the Access Fund purchased the parcels. Thanks to the Access Fund's land conservation campaign, these loans have been made more accessible and affordable for the affiliated nonprofits to complete. In total, Southeast climbing coalitions have preserved over $3 million of land since the early 2000s. And the fight still resumes today as developers continue finding more rock hidden among coves and canyons in the Cumberland Plateau and Appalachian Mountains.
We've done 2,000 routes, and this is a good statistic. Out of those 2,000 routes, only 20% are open to the public. So that's 80% of these climbs that are out there are closed and need to be opened. And so my hope and dream is that this next age of climbing in Chattanooga is going to be more of this access boom.
The summit was that ribbon ceremony, and we're rolling now. I mean, now that we can do that, again, generic term, but the sky's the limit. My ultimate goal is to create access for the next generations to come. And right now this place is cool for them to do rope swings and play around in the woods and play with the lizards and build sand castles and do all that kind of stuff. But they're here, and one day they'll be taking over all of Daddy's climbing gear, and they're gonna have kids, and to be able to have this resource now for them, for generations to come, is why we're doing it.
Denny Cove is a landmark acquisition project for the SCC and Access Fund. It's a 685-acre tract that sits in the middle of Fiery Gizzard Gorge, and it was an over $1 million acquisition. We were able to make the dream come true by partnering with many different foundations in the area and Tennessee State Parks. It's really important that we pay off our loan as soon as possible. Our original loan was $200,000, and now we're down to $69,000. As soon as we pay off this loan, SCC and Access Fund can move on to other acquisition projects here in the Southeast.
It's an honor to have bolted and lived my life with these guys and to find a place of such extraordinary nature that... Cheers, man. Yeah. Okay. I love these men. I love that area.
I've never been able to do it. I hope I did it on film. Did you get that? Did you get that?
They say they're waiting for
That's them. Look, they're working. Going for perfection. Look, we'll take a nap.
A new generation is going to come about, and my hope for that generation is keep exploring by all means, because that is what climbing is all about, I believe. But I feel that there's a real opportunity for this next generation to really pursue the next logical step in Chattanooga's climbing, which is to secure, I'm talking thousands of routes that are out there, and to secure them and open them up for public access. And I think there's real potential for this generation to kind of take hold of that and to really, I don't know, to be identified as the, the saviors or the champions of Chattanooga climbing from an access standpoint. I think there's huge potential for that.